In today's episode, we'll be looking at the two final spider levels to be implemented. One where the user races the spider around a maze on the wall, and one where the maze is on the ceiling, where the spider descends from above the user before being sorted into the correct box. We'll look at how this is all animated, and how this new functionality fits into the wider architecture of the system. Timestamps for this video and a link to the repo are in the description below. Hey guys, welcome back. We are officially in double digits. This is episode 10 of my Dev Diary series, developing a gamified virtual reality exposure therapy system in Unity for the Oculus Rift. So as you probably just saw in the intro that I just played, what I've been mainly working on the last couple of weeks is getting the last of the levels done. So to go back and give some context, the sort of approach that we're taking to exposure therapy is called graded exposure, and that's basically where you take the intensity of the treatment up in steps, right? So you start off with a really low intensity form of the treatment. So if in real life it would be like a spider on the other side of the room, and then you step up, like you bring the spider closer, and then eventually you progress to holding the spider like in your hands, right? So I'm going to start off for you guys by showing you the levels that we already have in place, so that you have the context of where the ones that we need to add, that I have now added, fit into the rest of the flow. I've been trying to keep these videos like not super long. The ones of this new format that I did, the first one was like 40 minutes. The second one I tried to do it quicker, that was 30 minutes, still kind of long. I think they're just going to have to be as long as they're going to be honest. Like, I'll end the video when I'm out of things to say. Cool. So let's start off with, as I said, just showing you guys through the current flow of levels. So I'm going to start off super easy. So level 1 is just having a laptop in front of you with a cartoon image of a spider, just answering basic comprehension questions. Level 2 is going to be the same deal, but with this realistic image of the spider. Currently they're both in the same level. I'm going to separate them out so they're different levels. But yeah, level 1's going to be cartoon image, level 2 realistic image, and just answering these like multi-choice questions on the screen. There's going to be a voiceover that reads out some spider facts, and you just listen to that and then give the answer. This is called imaginal exposure, I think it's called, which basically just means that you're not really confronting the stimulus directly yet, you're just kind of thinking about it and activating the same parts of your brain as like a way to sort of slowly ease into the treatment. Level 3 is going to be the same type of deal, with having the voiceover read out some spider facts, and yeah, you just give the answers, but this time there's actually a physical spider in front of you. This one doesn't move, it just stays. Well, it moves a little bit. It animates this like little like idle animation, but it doesn't get out of the box or anything crazy yet. And the spider also changes each time. We want to have a variety of different spiders, not just one, because it just trains you to not be afraid of that one specific spider. So yeah, level 3 is just spider in the box, sitting still, not doing anything. Level 4 is this spider in the box, where you take off the lid of the box and then you feed it some food. Originally I just had one kind of food in here, and now I've added some more just so that you can kind of get it wrong, so that, yeah, it just adds a bit more complexity, I guess, makes it a bit more interesting. So it prompts you for what food spiders want. Again, spiders don't like eat courgettes and, you know, croissants, but they do in my simulation. So this is level 4. So again, like stepping it up a little bit with the spider now reacting to you, and you have to get like a bit closer to it kind of thing, but it's still not moving around yet. The next level, level 5, we don't have yet, or we now do because I've now added it, but pretend we haven't got level 5 yet. So we need something that is basically one small step up from this, basically, from having a spider in the tank on the table, not moving around in front of you, but a spider that can move somewhat. So I'm going to skip over the spoilers. Spoilers. So level 6? Yes. Level 6 is we just have a spider on the table. So now the spider's on the table, it can move around, but only where you tell it to move. So again, with the foods, it will prompt you for what food the spider should eat, and then you basically use the laser pointer and the trigger and guide it to that particular food. So the spider is in front of you, on the table, nearby, moving around, but not moving around unpredictably, right? You're in full control of the spider's movement the entire time. So we need a level for level 5 that bridges the gap between the level in the tank and that one that we just saw. So the next level, level 7, I believe, is this one, where all the spider does is walks in like a predefined shape. So it will randomize what shape it is, and then you have to watch the spider and then answer the question of what shape is the spider walking. So again, this is like the next step up from the last one, where the spider is moving around. You're not in control of it, but it's still moving predictably. It's not, running around crazy everywhere. So the one after that, level 8, is... what is this? Right. So level 8 in the last... I don't think it was the last update I talked about this, but before this last round of work, level 8 was like a maths game. So the idea of it is that you have these spiders running around in front of you. So, where are we? Here we go. So, a bunch of spiders running around, not in your control. And rather than focusing on the spider, like we did in the last level, I should probably have less spiders here. It's a bit of an extreme jump. But instead of focusing on the one spider, like in the last level, you're meant to ignore it instead. It's like how if you see a spider in the room with you, you might be tempted just to like fixate on it and just not look away, right? And that's kind of that's the kind of behavior that this level is trying to train out of you a bit. It's by making you complete a task that involves actively ignoring spiders that are around you. So originally you'd look up at the ceiling and it would display a string of numbers and you had to add them up. That worked, but I didn't like it all that much because it kind of relied on like having, I don't know, that sort of maths ability, I guess. Not that it's super difficult, but I think it makes it a bit more accessible if it's a memory game instead. So what it is now is it just reads out a string of different words, and then you have to watch the sequence and then tell it which word was not in that sequence. And you can repeat the sequence as well, and it's the same every time for each round anyway. So I think that's much more accessible. It achieves the same effect if you have to watch the screen on the ceiling and ignore the spiders, but it doesn't need that kind of arithmetic that the maths game did. So that's level 8. And like so there's 5 rounds of this. Each level is like comprised of different rounds. And some, not in all the levels, but in some levels, the higher rounds get more difficult. So like in this one, for example, we're just showing a longer string of words in the later rounds. So level 9 is the one where you have a bunch of spiders in front of you. Now you actually have to pick them up. So you have a red box and a blue box, and you have to pick them up. So I'm getting the answer wrong there, putting the wrong spider in the wrong box. You have to look up, you have to look at the underside of the spider, and see which color group it is, and then you get some score if you put it in the right box. So again, it's the next step up when now you're actually touching the spiders and like feeling the controller vibrate in your hands and stuff. So that's level 9, and then level 10 has to be another step up above that, right? So in some way, more intense than what we're doing here. So what I ended up doing for level 5 is basically having this maze on the wall, and it's basically a race. So you have to use your laser pointer to guide the spider and guide it to the finish line, basically. So it's the same type of thing as level 6, where you have the spider on the table following your laser pointer, but it's just further away from you and it's like on a wall, so it's not as close in proximity to you as it is on the table, but it is still more intense than having a spider just in a box just sitting there, right? So you have to, as I said, use your laser pointer to guide it around the maze. If you touch any of these red areas, then the spider basically falls off the wall and has to respawn. It's not really showing it here because I'm not quite giving you the right angle, but there's a timer. So if we go to the first round, so again, there's 3 rounds here, and the first round is the easiest maze, and second and third get harder and harder. So as soon as we pass this green line, this timer starts and basically tells you how long you have to get a gold medal. And there's like predefined times for each maze of gold, silver, and bronze. All 3 giving you a different amount of score. Obviously getting the max score for gold. Again, we have the different spiders for each round. So we start off with the jumping spider for the first round, the wolf spider for the second round, and then a tarantula for the third round. What you might notice is that we have like different start and end points for each maze. Part of the reason for that is because it just adds some variety, I guess, and means I can lay out more interesting mazes that are a bit less repetitive. And also because when the spider spawns in the start round of the next place, I want the end round to be the new end round, not to be directly underneath where my cursor already is, because then the system picks that up and the spider starts walking towards it immediately. Before you even really know what's going on, the spider's already moving around, which isn't really ideal. So if I move it to a different start position, you see my cursor disappeared there, because there's no like UI underneath my cursor anymore. So no cursor, the spider doesn't pick it up and it doesn't start moving around. And then yeah, level 3 or round 3 of level 5 is the most difficult one. So I just added this little bit of code that basically checks how hard we're pushing the trigger down. So if you push it down like all the way, then we get am I actually recording any of this? I should probably check. Yes, I am. Cool. If you push it down all the way, then the spider moves at max speed. If we push it down just slightly, then you get a slower speed of movement, which kind of helps with these like tight corners. You can kind of see that I'm, yeah, just doing like a smaller press there just to get that cornering right. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to level 5. I'm pretty happy with this one. I think it achieves the job, like therapy-wise, of being an appropriate level of engagement and like proximity with the stimulus. But I think it's pretty fun as well. You know, I've got all the sound effects of like the klaxon when the spider starts, and I don't know, just I enjoy it anyway. But the only concern that I have is that after doing this level, the next level seems kind of like kind of not as interesting anymore, to be honest. Because mechanically it's the same thing, just much simpler, right? There's no red bits where you can fall off the maze, there's no timing. It is a bit different because it has these like different targets that you have to go over, but it's just not quite as interesting. So yeah, I'm going to sort of stew on that for a while and see if I can come up with some ways to make this a bit more interesting. The jumping spider that I have does have like a jump animation, so I could maybe think of something where I have to have the spider like jump over obstacles. That could be kind of cool, and also be pretty good at being a bit creepy as well, I think, which is what we're after. If anything in any of these videos gives you those like, ugh, spiders are weird kind of response, that is exactly what we're after, right? It's that exact kind of response of just like a little bit of unease, right? That we are trying to invoke, because being in that state is what exposure therapy is all about, right? That's the entire point. So yeah, this level isn't super interesting. I could do something like there's some kind of puzzle on the table and you have to like make the spider push a block around to complete a puzzle. I don't know. I'll have a think and see if I can make it a bit more interesting. But yeah, so that is that maze. One other thing I guess I can call out is that it'll be relevant later for the architecture diagram, is that we want to respawn the spider after that start line. So see there, we respawned after the green line. So if you fall off, you don't start the race again, the timer keeps on running. But if you reset the level, which I do here, then the race does start again. So we start before the finish line. Yeah, it will come up later for the architecture diagram. So that's level 5. The last level we have to go through is level 10, which is kind of similar in some ways, but kind of different in others. So level 10 is kind of a combination of a lot of the previous levels. So we have a bunch of little spiders on the table running around that you just have to kind of try and ignore and just make your peace with and focus on the actual task, which is another maze, but this maze is on the ceiling instead. And once the spider gets to the end of this maze, then it drops down on a thread of silk, and then you have to basically pick it up and put it in the correct colored box. So again, red or blue on the underbelly of the spider, basically. Same type deal where if the spider touches the red, it falls and has to respawn, and you just have to start again. If the spider falls on like round 3, you start again at round 3 rather than from the very start. And it doesn't penalize you anything for like being slow here or anything. And the penalty comes if you put the spider in the wrong box. So we get the spider to this drop zone, and then does this whole sequence of animations where it descends from the ceiling on this thread of silk and comes all the way down to the table, doing all his animations here, comes down with its spider friends, and then starts pathing like an ordinary spider. And then we pick it up, see what color it is, put it in the box. That triggers the next round with a more complicated maze. And then we get some score because it's in the right box. So, what else do I have to say about this one? Yeah, again, this is the most difficult. Well, maybe not the most mechanically difficult, but the most creepy, I guess. I think the whole spider descending from the silk thing is like a little bit unnerving, which again is perfect. You do have the option of picking it like up directly off of the silk. You haven't got to wait for it to descend completely. So you can just grab it right there, which I think looks pretty decent. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to that one. Again, I have the whole thing of you can push the trigger down less to sort of achieve this tighter cornering. I put this whole thing on a grid, which I think makes it a bit easier to like align your cursor properly to navigate these like tight little corridors that I have. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to that one. Again, I feel like it's not quite as interesting as the race we had earlier, at least not mechanically. I think it's spookier. But yeah, I feel like I kind of outdid myself with the race, because now everything just doesn't quite seem to live up to that standard, I guess. But I guess the race is the halfway point, so maybe it's good to have like an extra exciting like midway bit to keep people interested. So the biggest difficulty I had getting this level to work was that sequence of animations where we start on the ceiling and descend on that thread of silk and animate our way down until we drop onto the table, and then we can start walking normally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all hide my face because that is in the way. Let me turn that off. That's a mistake I made in the last video. My face was covering a lot of the stuff I was trying to show, which isn't ideal. So what I'm going to do to explain this to you guys, to try and explain this to you guys, is show you the different animation states we have and in what point of the sequence each animation state triggers, basically. So the animation states we have for this sequence are lower, descend, descend to, and drop, which Now that I'm saying it to someone else, the naming of those is just the worst. Lower, descend, and drop all mean the exact same thing. It makes sense to me. I'll try and explain it to you guys. So this is the animation graph. So you can see as we're turning, we're triggering like turn left, turn right, idle. So we start off moving to the drop zone. The first animation we do is the lower animation, which is this like standing on our hind legs type move. The next one we do is, I'll explain why these are different in a minute, but descend and descend 2 is the animation where we're on our way down and doing this walk on the thread of silk, just so it looks like, you know, we're not just sort of static, we're actually still alive as we're descending, we haven't just died. And then the last animation is drop, where we drop down to the table like this. So, why was this so difficult, and why do we have to have so many different states here? So, we'll start off with a lower, because lower makes sense. So, let's try and find the clip for this. Right, so lower is the same animation as the animation that plays on the tank feed level. I can turn my camera back on now, but let's put me over here instead. So this is the same animation that we have when we feed the spider in the tank, and it like reaches up to grab the food, right? There's a difference between the orientation of the objects in the animation clip and the orientation of the object in the scene. And I'll explain really what that means in a second. But when you look at the spider in the scene, it's upside down at this point, right? It's on the ceiling. But this animation clip, the spider is right way up. But because it's inverted in the scene, we see it as inverted. So, first animation makes sense. We're just standing up, but upside down. The next thing I wanted was to have the spider do the walk animation, right? The thing is, the walk animation, so we're walking on the way down on the silk. The walk animation, if I can find the bloody thing. The walk animation, again, we're flat, right? And the thing is, so if I add a transition here. So if we try and transition from stand to walk, then at the end of the stand, we're kind of starting to point upwards, right? But then if we transition back to walk, then it just doesn't work, because now we're sideways again, or flat again, I guess, when we want to be sideways. So I hope that makes sense, that, you know, that's not right, and we want to be walking like up this way. So what I wanted to do was basically just take the walk animation and just invert it, not invert it, rotate it 90 degrees. I couldn't find a way to just do this like in Unity, just like editing anything in here that will basically change the clip. I tried downloading Blender and Maya, and I just couldn't get the animation clips I had to play nice. They wouldn't import properly. I could rotate the object in the clip, but when I exported it again, it would like lose its textures and stuff, and it just wasn't working. What I managed to figure out was the file format that these animation clips use is luckily human readable, so it's not just like a billion characters of hex or something. So what I was able to finally find, as you can see, line 2665, so right at the top, you know, really in my face, really helped me out there, was the rotation for the model. So basically changing like a 0 to a 90 rotates the model in the animation clip. So that let me create this descend animation, where we're basically playing the walk animation, but we're just doing it sideways. So again, we're like pointing upwards here, even though in the scene when we descend we're coming downwards. And that's again because we started on the ceiling, the game object is still upside down, right? So the thing is, so that currently at that point in time, that's like working. So as we're like here in the descend animation, That's working fine. The end goal of this sequence, though, is that we want to drop onto the table. And so if you look at the way that this spider is facing in this animation clip, and then if you find the drop animation, it's facing the other way, right? So when it drops onto the table, this is what it looks like. But that doesn't integrate properly with the animation we were just playing, just the Descend 1 animation. So to show you what I mean, if we try and transition directly from Descend to Drop, then it looks very, very jank. Like that, basically, where the entire thing flips, because the orientation of the model in the animation clip doesn't match, like between the two clips. So what I had to do was go back into this file, make a new one of these, change like a 90 to a -90 to rotate 180, make a new animation clip that is the same as the one that we just had. So it's the same as Descend, but just pointing down instead. And that's basically how this works, is Descend 2 is the same clip, but the orientation of the model in the animation clip is just different. And the reason why it doesn't just flip immediately in the scene is because I've got some code that says that as soon as we change to Descend 2, we also rotate the game object in the scene 180 degrees. So because we're changing both at the same time, they cancel each other out and you can't tell a difference, even though as far as the animator is concerned, it has now changed, meaning we can now chain ourselves into the drop animation properly without it looking unbelievably jank. So the moral of the story is that I wish I learned how to animate properly. Because at the start of this project, I said this in one of my earlier videos. At the start of this project, I knew that it would have taken me like a lot of time to learn like how to make a proper animation rig and make an animation that actually looks good, because I haven't really got much experience with that kind of thing. Like I've done a little bit at uni, not like making an actual rig or anything, but just like some, what was it called? Joggle? Some graphics library. And like having like an animation graph, but not like this, just in, I don't even remember what it was written in, Java maybe? Yeah, I think Joggle would be Java, yeah. Anyway, so I knew that it would have taken me a long time to get my head around it all and to make it, and it felt like it would be an entirely different project. But throughout the course of this project, animation is by far the thing that has caused the most holdups. Like, if I came into this project knowing how to animate, I would be, you know, months more progressed than I currently am right now. So I think I just didn't anticipate how, to be fair, I didn't really have an idea of what animations I wanted to do at the time. Like I didn't predict that I would want to have this whole animation where it comes from the ceiling and comes down on some silk and then lands and does that whole thing. If I knew that I needed that, then maybe I would have actually learned how to make that, because if I could just make that myself, I'd just make it one long animation clip, and I wouldn't need all of this code, like, you know, flipping the spider and changing the clip at the right time and doing all of this craziness. So yeah, lesson learned for next time, I guess. It's kind of the flip side of using these assets from the asset store. It's a really good asset, this, and the animations on it are really good. But because the creator very understandably hasn't anticipated that I want to do all this craziness with it, the animations have not been designed for this craziness. So I have to write all of this code and all of this just unanticipated stuff to get it to work for a use case that wasn't planned for, basically. So yeah, those are my animation woes. Again, I spend a lot of these dev diaries talking about animation issues, but it works, so hooray. So the last thing to show you guys is just the architecture changes, what new controllers have been introduced and how they relate to everything else in the system. So starting off with wall spider follow controller. So this is inheriting everything from the follow spider controller. So follow spider controller is the one that is on the table and follows your laser pointer. And the spider that we have in the race level is the same as this, but just overrides like some of it, like that respawn I was talking about. This particular kind of follow spider controller has to keep track of if it is in the middle of the race or not, and if it is, then rather than using the respawn functionality on the base class, we need to have our own functionality that respawns it in a different location, basically. Let me show you the code for that quick. So, where are we? Wall spider follow controller. So you can see here. So respawn, if mid-race, then we basically respawn to the mid-race respawn position, which is at the start, but just after the start line. And if we're not in the middle of the race, then we can use the base class's respawn logic. That's pretty much all that does. We have the ceiling spider follow controller. So again, has the same code as the follow spider controller. So detects where the cursor is, turns towards it, moves towards it when you press the trigger. It needs some more stuff. So it needs to have the spider grab handler so that it knows when to basically make the spider grabbable. So in theory, you shouldn't really be able to reach up to the ceiling and just pick the spider off of the wall. There are ways that you can basically tell Oculus that your like neutral position is different from where it should be, so that you can sort of get out of bounds and get into new areas and stuff. To be fair, I could just put like a collider in that stops the camera from going that high, but I didn't. I'm doing it this way now. So, but yeah, basically it's just saying turn off the grab functionality so you can't pick it up when it's on the ceiling. I'm not expecting people to get up to the ceiling anyways, but just in case. We have this silk manager on the ceiling spider follow controller, which basically it just has a line renderer on it that just draws that like silk out as it's on its way down and fades it out after we've picked it up off the table, or off the silk even. The ceiling spider follow controller has like all of the code that handles that descent and all of the animation craziness in it. We have ceiling spider random path controller. So we have both of these controllers on that same spider in that final level where it descends. And the ceiling spider random path controller, let's have a look at what that does. So ceiling spider random path controller, where are we? So yeah, so what this does is when we respawn, so say when you put that spider in the red box or the blue box and you respawn, it should first enable the other controller that turns the following functionality back on. So that's why these two controllers both have each other, is because when we are on the ceiling and when we are descending, then we have the ceiling spider follow controller turned on. When we reach the table, then we turn that controller turns itself off and turns on the random path controller, and vice versa. When we respawn, random path controller turns itself off, turns the next one on. An advantage of doing these dev diaries is that it actually makes me think about the implementation more. And as I was sort of thinking about how to explain this to you guys, I kind of realized that I'm not really a fan of this. I really try and avoid having this like two-way relationship like this. When you have two controllers that like have each other and, you know, pass control between each different one, it just makes the flow of control and the flow of data really hard to follow, and it's kind of hard to work out what's actually happening, and it makes it a complete pain to debug. So at some point, what I'm hoping to do is refactoring this into a single controller that is aggregated of of both of these. So rather than the spider having both of these controllers on it at once and like switching out which one is active, we have just one controller that has access to both of these, but that means there's just one script that is turning on each one. So say the update method, right? So the update method gets called every frame update, and I can just have like a boolean that says, you know, are we on the table, like is random pathing enabled? If it is, call the update method on this one. If it's not, call the update method on the other one. And that way it just seems neater. We haven't got this two-way relationship going on, and we haven't got scripts like deactivating each other all the time. And we just have like one central point of control there, basically. I think that's what I'd like to do, ideally. It works for now, but there will inevitably be bugs in this code that I haven't found yet, and it will make finding them much easier if the architecture actually makes some sense. So that's the change to the spider architecture and just the wider scene. Since I've added the spider zone manager is what controls the red box and the blue box. So you put the spider in, and the zone manager detects that the spider's in there, and then tells the manager of the current level if we got the answer right or wrong, basically. And I've just said that also now links to level 10, because level 10 also has those boxes. And in kind of a similar way, there's a food manager that detects when the spider collides with, you know, the chicken leg or the zucchini or whatever, and then basically tells the level there was a collision. I could have that on the spider, but it's both the tank spider controller and the follow spider controller that need that. And I just didn't want to write it twice. I could have made like an interface or a component or something and just had them both attached to it, which I might change, but yeah, I guess I just wanted this to be kind of consistent with the spider zone manager, in that a spider collides with the object that food manager is on, food manager detects that, and then tells the level that is active that there was a collision, and to score the user appropriately. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys for this update. Like I said, there's a lot of polishing to do for a lot of this stuff, but what's important is that now we have all 10 levels actually in the game, which is pretty cool. So I think what I'd really want to get done next is to actually get the environment in. So rather than just having this big, you know, empty expanse, I can actually have some setting for all of this. And I think this is where the whole system will really start actually looking like something beyond just some weird prototype. I want to have one environment where like this is some nice like office or something, like kind of therapist's office, and then one where you're perhaps in a garden or something. And yeah, rather than having like a big floating screen in the air, this would be like a TV screen or something. And this will be, you know, the ceiling of the room that you're in, rather than just a big floating block in the sky. What's good about that whole piece of work is that there's not really a whole lot of actual programming in there. It's pretty much just finding what assets I want to use, dragging and dropping them in, getting the lighting right and stuff. So yeah, there shouldn't be like many difficult bugs to try and hammer down with the next batch of work. So I'm hoping that pretty quickly now, things should really start to take shape and actually start looking like an actual system. So yeah, hopefully, touch wood, everything will look very different by the time the next update. So yeah, we'll see. Exciting times. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching, guys. At the end of my last video, I managed to like cut off the outro when I was mid-sentence, so I'll try not to do that again.